We're going to find ourselves in a very familiar place, a section of Scripture that is in all of the Gospels, the feeding of the 5,000. But before we do that, I'm going to ask you, maybe scan through your Gospels and see, are there other instances or other things that are in all four of the Gospels? And the answer is obviously yes, there is. And I want you as a table, people at your table, to think about it and maybe come up with some more.
All four Gospels.
All four Gospels. And we can easily check it because if you'll notice here, the EHV does this. It's got all the references right there.
Okay. Matthew, Mark, and all have the beginning of the defense. The forerunner of the baptism
Story of Jesus. Ministry, baptism, miracles, baptism. But they present the birth, miracles, and ministry,
Resurrection, that's right. Crucifixion is also there. Yeah, Palm Sunday. You're knocking it out of the park. Palm Sunday's the same.
These are nice.
Yeah. Good for you. You got the big one.
Peter denying Jesus.
Oh, got it.
I don't know if Peter denying Jesus is in all of them. Is it? It might be. Definitely the resurrection, definitely the crucifixion, definitely Palm Sunday. Alrighty, what do you guys come up with? This table knocked it out of the park. And I'm not going to tell you what they said because that would give you the answer. But you could come up with your own. What do you have? What did you guys come up with?
Birth of Jesus.
What's up?
Birth of Jesus.
Yeah, you'd think the birth of Jesus, but actually the Gospel of John doesn't talk about it all that much. There's not like the whole Luke 2 scene that you get.
Okay.
There might be like a reference to it. I would say the same thing with Jesus' baptism. John kind of makes a reference to it, but it doesn't actually lay it out.
But John the Baptist.
What's up?
His preparing the way, John the Baptist.
John the Baptist, yeah, that's in all of them, for sure, for sure. Yep.
Peter denying Jesus.
Is it in all of them? I was just talking to them. I didn't know if it was in all of them.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
All right, there it is. So that's in all of them. There's a handful of events that are in all of them. So you've got Peter denying Jesus. This group had like 4 more. What else do you think? Crucifixion most certainly is in all of them. What else?
Resurrection.
Resurrection, very good, is in all of them. There's another event that's in all of them that we've
Birth, Jesus' birth.
not in all of them.
Is the ascension?
Baptism, not necessarily in all of them. Ascension, we look at Luke primarily, and then Acts, which is kind of weird, but Acts has that, and that's not necessarily a gospel.
John baptizing Jesus is in all 3 of them.
It is in John's gospel. Does it actually have the event, or does it just say John baptized Jesus?
It says compare John. John baptizes Jesus, Mark, Luke, and Matthew. And it says compare John 1:29-34.
Yeah, and that's
It might not be.
Yeah, it's a reference, but it's not necessarily like a writing of the same event. You get these events, and I mean, okay, they're the Gospels, so they're going to have a lot of stuff. And even the stuff that we look at and stuff, there's going to be stuff in there that's not necessarily the same account, or they might make reference to specific things or different things that are in there. But today, what's interesting is we're going to be looking at an account that actually is in all 4 Gospels, and they actually all 4 record it. It's not just like a passing like, oh, this happened. It's here's how it happened according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And so you can maybe guess that the very first thing that I'm going to ask you to do is to pick one of those accounts and place it against the backdrop of John's. Okay? And since there's enough people in here, what we're going to do is you front 2 tables, you pick which one you want, but the back tables, you have no freedom. You will do Matthew, you will do Mark, you will do Luke, and you'll also do Matthew. So John, I'm going to read John, this account from John. I've got John 1 through 14, which is the whole account. You're going to look at your second one, the second gospel, and you're going to compare it to John's. Okay, so listen to John's. This is what John says. After this, Jesus crossed over to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, or Tiberias. A large crowd followed him because they saw the miraculous signs he was performing on those who were sick. Jesus went up on the hillside and sat down there with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a huge crowd coming toward him, he asked Philip, "Where can we buy bread for these people to eat?" But Jesus was saying this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. And Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough for each of them to have just a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what is that for so many people?" And Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, so they sat down. There was about 5,000 men. And then Jesus took the loaves, and after giving thanks, he distributed pieces to those who were seated. He also did the same with the fish, as much as they wanted. And when the people were full, he told his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over, so that nothing is wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with pieces from the 5 barley loaves left over by those that were eaten, those who had eaten. When the people saw the miraculous sign Jesus did, they said, "This really is the prophet who is coming into the world." Okay, so take that, grab another gospel, look at it, and say, "Hey, what's the same? What's different?" And maybe just come up with a final summary as a table as to what do you notice about the differences?
There was a boy, he just says.
Well before his time.
Which ones are you guys doing? Luke? They're all good.
Does it say he goes up to his hill? Does it say he sits down?
Yeah, I always think of that.
Well, they probably did. They went around collecting and everything.
Yeah, I felt really bad. Well, like I got down, I was going to talk to him about having.
No, it doesn't say anything about
We
that.
didn't get very far, and I was like, really? We also have allergies and kids that are.
Now, did he go,
So,
did he do the?
yeah, well, that's what happened. I mean, like, at some point, I think,
Isn't that in this?
I don't think it's a never could happen, but I think at some point we have to be prepared to say yes.
Doesn't say anything.
And it makes sense for everybody. And that just didn't happen this morning. So, whatever comes after that. I know you would understand. I'm just letting you know that's what happened.
Thank you, I appreciate that a lot.
Yep. I know that you will talk to him. And I mean, he's obviously welcome to come and still do classes. Oh, at some point I think it's just really like, okay, like let's assess everything and take it all in.
I know it.
We can't do that
You're right.
a minute before.
So it's like, how many times you just sort of say, oh, I got things to do.
Alrighty, what do you guys have?
To stay and listen.
You were talking. I like that, Roger. Point to somebody else.
That's what we're doing.
We nominated him.
There,
What? First of all, what gospel are you looking at?
I'm looking at Matthew,
Okay.
and there is no mention of the boy having the 5 loaves and 2 fish.
Okay. No boy is brought into this equation, but they do have the loaves and the fish.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Same as Mark.
The same thing as Mark. Okay.
I'm also in Matthew, and the first person who talks about feeding the people is Jesus, or the disciple. I'm sorry.
Yes.
It's the disciples in this one, but in John it talks about Jesus talking to them first.
Yeah. Excellent. Who brings up this great large crowd? I think actually in the other Gospels, and maybe I'm just thinking of Matthew, but I think Luke does the same thing, and so does they're like, it's getting late. There's all these like little details that are like trying to fill you in, like, they might be hungry, they might be hungry, you know. And the disciples are like, hey, what should we do? Let's send them away so they can go buy food and stuff. So we know there was a conversation between Jesus and the disciples, for sure about that. Who instigates that conversation, we're not 100% for sure. But we do know that Jesus finally asks, here, Philip, a question. Anything else? Yeah, go June.
John is much more detailed than Luke.
Okay.
Luke is like about this much information.
Yeah, Luke I think is the shortest out of all of these accounts. I think. And I mean, it wouldn't be hard to, let's just look. 7 verses, 14 verses. That's what? 8 verses. So Matthew's about the same length. Mark is the one I believe that says that their people sat down in specific numbers, right? Doesn't Mark say that? 50 and 100? I heard someone say, how did they count all those people? Well, if they were in groups of 100, it'd be a whole lot easier than, you know. Yeah.
But do they all mention just men? Because so many times we've heard that the men equaled 5,000. And if they had wives and children, it could have been double.
You know, it was only could have been men there.
Yeah, I know. So
Only could have been men. And there would have been nobody else.
But see, when I taught that story, it was always, I've heard men plus their wives and children.
Well, I mean, that's a really reasonable thing to think, Amy.
Okay.
I was just joking.
Mark actually says men.
In Matthew it says 5,000 men besides women and children.
So in this regard, one of the ways in which they reckon like numbers is that they don't take into account the women. And that's not because they just don't care about women, but like that's just what they did. Right? So you'd be like, there were this number of men. And the assumption is, guess what, there are also women and children there too. Matthew says that, as Ann pointed out. You look at when they leave Egypt, guess what it says? There were 200,000 fighting men, and that's all that it gives. Doesn't say how many people, it just says this is the number of fighting men. So you extrapolate from those, right? And that's where you get those big numbers. Yes?
Can you imagine the projection he had to use with his voice to teach all 5,000 plus people?
It was probably a miracle too.
Yeah. So in this regard, I don't know if you ever saw if anybody's ever seen The Chosen. But the way in which they handle that is they say that the disciples, which I don't think is a terrible idea, is that the disciples would listen and then they would speak it to people farther down the line. I will say this, they have done, archaeologists have gone and went to these places around the Sea of Galilee. And last week's sermon, they found a spot where if you're off in the water, you could easily, because of the geographical location, you could easily speak to thousands of people. It's like a natural amplifier is what it is. And the voice just carries. Go for it.
Well, I know that happens because on our lake, I can hear people out there talking out there.
Yeah, and you say, hey, be quiet. trying to sleep.
I can hear what you're saying.
Don't talk about me like that. That's what you should say. And they're like, who said that? I'm down here in the
It
water.
doesn't say that he was out on the boat or anything like that.
Oh.
I've just gone out on the boat to preach.
Yeah.
Now, also, don't you think that that could be, I mean, we already have, we're going to have, when he feeds them, obviously that's a miracle he performed. So couldn't he also perform that as a miracle, that he's speaking and they can all hear?
Certainly could be. I mean, you certainly could say that's true. Jesus can make his voice carry like none other.
Too many good names.
In fact, he's done it for thousands of years, right? He's still doing it. Yeah, so it's possible that is the case. Yeah. Any other differences from looking at your gospel account in John? Just a fun opportunity to look at an account that's in all the gospels, but is recorded in some aspects different. And not like different, like, whoa, what's going on here? But just like clearly seeing, here's different people at the same event saying, here's what took place. And we're going to dissect John's. We're not going to dissect any of the other ones. But if you want to bring in details, we can discuss them too. Go for it, Debs.
And if four of us were to witness some event, we'd each have our own explanation.
I'm going to tell you right now, Debs, no, it would be the exact same. I mean, obviously, these are different people. They experience it differently. Unless you were talking to like a husband and wife, then it would be the exact same story. And it would be the wife's story. The husband would be like, exactly what she said. That's what we're doing. That's what we're going.
I want to be in your house. That doesn't happen.
Oh, okay. She said it. That's all. She said that's what we're doing. God, do you have a question?
Well, also, in Mark it says, where did I go? Should we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread? And these guys say,
Philip says, hey, 200 denarii won't even buy enough for them to eat.
yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this whole, obviously we're talking about this whole thing.
Yeah.
I find this, at least especially studying it for you guys this morning, I found it, for me, very rewarding. Just to stop and slow down and just kind of think through what is taking place. And that's what these next questions do. Okay, so in John's Gospel, what leads the people to Jesus?
He was a healer.
Excellent. So what are they seeing? I mean, what's taking place that the people are starting to crowd around Jesus?
Miracles.
These are miracles. People are following miracles, which I think is important, and it's going to be important as we jump into going further into John's Gospel, chapter 6, towards the end, because what we're going to see is that these people who are following Jesus for miracles aren't really there for Jesus. Because we're gonna watch a lot of people walk away from Jesus at the end of John chapter 6. Jesus is gonna start teaching some really hard things, and people are like, I don't know. And so much so that even Jesus is like, hey, are you guys gonna leave too? And he's talking to his disciples, and Peter has that beautiful answer, hey, where are we gonna go? You're the only one that has the words of eternal life. Like, we can't leave you. So it is important for us to note that Jesus is gathering a following. And I think this is right in line with everything that we've studied in John, is that there's always this tension. There's always this tension between the physical things that Jesus is doing and him living in this physical world, and then really what he came to do with the spiritual aspect of it. You see this tension, I think, in this crowd. And I think you see it even in Jesus as he's trying to teach and convey this message to his disciples. And we'll get further into that. So the miracles are what lead people to run to Jesus. Now remember, and this comes off the backdrop of chapter 5, right, where Jesus asked this guy who's been sick for years, hey, don't you want to be healed, you know? And he's not talking physically, he's talking about spiritually. Don't you want to be right with God? And so Jesus then, you got all these people doing this miraculous, people running to Jesus for this miraculous sign. And we talked about it. The signs are not the thing. The signs point people to the thing, but they're not the thing, right? And we talked about this. You go to Yellowstone, you go to see the sign, take the picture, and leave. That's the only reason you go. You don't go to see. You don't go to see Old Faithful. You don't go to see the Grand Prismatic Spring. You just go for the sign. You take the picture and you leave, right? No, it's silly, right? That's dumb. Like the sign, taking a picture of the sign is maybe the first thing you do or the last thing you do, but it's not the reason you're going. You're going to see Yellowstone, to experience Yellowstone. So people are going to Jesus and they're fixated on the signs. Ooh, here's a healer. This is what we want. Well, you're missing the point. And we're gonna talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. So, comment on Jesus' question and the disciples' response. This is where I start to at least when I was looking through this, start to see some kind of interesting things, or at least start to think about some interesting things. This is the question. And in John's Gospel, Jesus is the one that asked it. So when Jesus looked up and saw a huge crowd coming, we're going to say big crowd. If we really are talking 5,000 men besides women and children, which we are, I mean, people throw out numbers of 15,000. I don't think that's outrageous. So Jesus looks up, sees a mass of people coming, a city, a small city coming towards him and his disciples. And then he says this. He asks Philip, and this is amazing to me. Where can we buy bread for these people to eat? That's his question. And the response is, now Jesus obviously knows what he's doing, and John cues us into that. And then Philip's answers and says, well, 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough for each of them to have a little. And then Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, comes and says, well, hey, there's a boy who's got 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. And then his response is, but what is that? What is that for so many people? These are the responses of the disciples to Jesus' question. Hey, where can we get bread for all these people? Where can we buy bread for all these people? What do you think of Jesus' question, and what do you think about the disciples' response?
They definitely didn't think that God could take care of it. They didn't think that.
What?
They had evidence when Jesus turned the water into wine that he could do miraculous food things, so it wasn't there anymore, though.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying Philip not thinking Jesus can do this?
I just feel like they didn't always say, hey, do a miracle, Jesus, do a miracle. I mean, didn't they kind of wait for him to respond in that fashion?
Yeah, I don't think you're off mark, Amy, by saying the disciples are following Jesus, going, hey, Jesus.
Yeah.
I kind of want some bread.
I know, right?
And can we have eggs and bacon?
Yeah, right.
I mean, he would never say that because bacon's not clean, but can we have eggs today instead of bacon?
Can you do a little miracle here?
Can I have not oatmeal, but cinnamon apple oatmeal? Would that be okay? Yeah, the disciples are not doing that. So it is very fair to say, I think what you see the disciples doing is they're desperate. They get at some facet who Jesus is, and we know that because they've got these confessions. Even Philip, remember Philip's confession? The very beginning of John 1. It's worth checking out. So John 1, very last part, right? Let's see here. Philip is the one that goes and tells Nathanael. Where's it at? Okay. Follow me now. Where's it at?
10.
Come and see, Philip told him, right? Nathanael said to him, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph, the one who Moses was talking about, right? So Philip says, this is the guy we've been waiting for, right? And now, the one who is the one who's going to do everything that the law of Moses is talking about. And so Jesus tells Philip, hey, Philip, where are we going to get all the bread to feed these people? And his response is I don't think we can feed these people.
Even if we worked for months, we wouldn't.
Right. The other gospel say even if we worked for months, we couldn't afford enough food for these people. What were you going to say, Karen?
Something to that effect, but even the believers, some of them were still in their doubting stages, and they were really looking for a king that would defeat the Romans and take care of all their worldly needs.
And it says at the end,
they had the misconception of the type of king
That's why Jesus flees.
It says when Jesus saw that they were ready to force him to be their king, he
Mhm.
slipped away into the hills by himself.
Yes. And we're going to say that's not the disciples. That's not the disciples. We're going to say that's not the disciples who are going to force him to be king. We're going to say that's everybody that's there for these miracles.
Yeah.
So the disciples, at some point, are still kind of like trying to figure out exactly who Jesus is, really. I mean, they know that he's important. They know that he's the fulfillment. But to actually map out, like, what does that actually mean? There's still a big question mark in their head. And we get to see them kind of growing and expanding their understanding of Jesus right in front of our very eyes. And so Jesus uses this, and it's interesting because John actually tells us, I don't know if the other Gospels say this or not, maybe they do, but I don't remember. But he says Jesus was saying this specifically to test him. Like, so Jesus is wanting specifically to teach his disciples a lesson with this whole account. With this large group of people, Jesus is saying, hey, where are we gonna buy bread for everybody? What are you gonna do, disciples, with this question that I placed in front of you? So Philip says, there's no way we could do anything. There's not enough bread anywhere close to us to feed these people, Jesus. And we might say, maybe try harder, Philip? I don't know. Andrew then comes in and is like, listen, we got 5 loaves and 2 fish. But then he finishes it off by saying, but what is that among so many? Both of them, I would say in this regard, as I kind of looked at this and thought about this, I'm not saying the disciples should have known any better, because I think if Jesus were to ask me, where were you get all the food? I'd be like, you know, Jesus, you remember that one time when you fed the 5,000? Let's do that again. Right? So this is that time. So I think the disciples are looking at this and they're going, yeah, I don't know. Go for it.
So they're just being really practical, probably.
Yeah.
But you know, in the beginning when it says that the Jewish Passover festival was near, so is this like the first year
Excellent.
of Jesus
So this is
teaching? I mean,
this
we're
is
not real close.
This is not the first year. If you look at like a timeline for Jesus teaching, we're looking second Passover, almost. So actually, if you read the chapter before Jesus, I believe Jesus is up for the Passover. This is almost a year time span between these 2 chapters. And remember, John doesn't follow chronological order.
Right.
Not necessarily. Now, sometimes he'll drop little clues and hints in the text that say, we're kind of hanging on to, well, it's before that. But, in all honesty, he places really important things, like where he wants them specifically to be, to kind of help us understand who Jesus is. I think this is placed in this specific section for that reason. Yes?
Isn't that a characteristic of the Hebrews, the Jews?
And
they don't often do.
In some aspects it is, but if you look at, let's say, and they're not like chronological, but at some point the other Gospels do follow much more closely to a chronological fashion than John does. Remember, they placed Jesus clearing the temple during Holy Week. John has it chapter 2, right? So John is doing stuff, I think, to just highlight certain aspects about Jesus, and I think that's why this one is where it is. Because in Jesus' ministry, it would be farther down the line. Yes?
Well, did he clear the temple only once or more than once?
I think he cleared it once, and I think he did it at the end of his ministry. I don't think he did it twice. Some people think that he cleared it twice, and if you want to, you can. You can think that way. I personally don't think that he cleared it twice. I think he cleared it once. And Amy, it sounds like if you believe that, it looks like, I think Amy's in the same boat as you.
I just have to pull it in.
All right.
I just noticed that we have
So the disciples get asked this question by Jesus. Their response is, yeah, we don't really know Jesus. We would maybe say, like, if you're going to give them a grade on their test. I don't know. I hesitate to do it. Well, we will. We don't have to. So go for it, Deb. You're going to be bold.
I think the sentence you used was probably pretty good.
Yep.
They don't really know Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, they're figuring him out, right? And I think that's I think at least, in all honesty, I think that's the beauty of the Gospels and seeing the disciples, because it's very much like us. Right? The more we know about Jesus, the more we start to understand, well, who is Jesus and what does he do for me? Right? There's a growth that takes place, much like the growth that happens in every believer. And that growth doesn't stop. It just continues to happen, right? And you see that the disciples, there are moments for their growth all the way up, even after Jesus has died for the sins of the world and then rose victorious. They're still growing, which is a model for us as believers. So then my question is, why in the world, according to this, why do you think John records the numbers to this account? Like, what does it matter, the numbers? Why record them?
Well, I think a lot of the miracles where he was healing people, it was more of a one-on-one type thing.
Okay.
And the water into wine, that was the barrels there. So having enough food to feed that many people was really different from all the other miracles he'd been doing.
So let's look at the numbers just for a moment. What numbers do we see in this account? We've got how many people, right? 5,000 men, besides women and children. You've got the boy who brings the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. If you're looking at Mark's Gospel, you got the 50 and 100 groups. And then you've also got this number, which this is the number that is actually, I think, quite curious. But I think there's a reason for it. There's a number of how many leftovers are gathered.
Oh, yeah.
Right? There's 12 basketfuls. And if you look at this, everybody eats their fill is what it says. And it's kind of curious that then there's just 12 basketfuls. I mean, we would say the basketfuls alone are more than what Jesus started with. We clearly see this as a miracle. So why in the world 12 basketfuls? Well, remember, what is Jesus doing? He's teaching his disciples. Now, he's teaching all these people too, but he's specifically testing and teaching his disciples in this whole process. So why record the numbers? Well, I think Jesus was a master educator. Just anybody who goes to school to be a teacher, I think you could look at Jesus and say, he does things on a next level. I think picking up a basket full of bread, if you're a disciple, after he's fed so many people, after you spent hours distributing food, and then you pick up a full basketful, would have been a pretty good message to you to say, you know, if we don't have anything or we need something, maybe we should just turn to Jesus first. Like, he kind of does this, you know? He provides in such a fashion that's over and abundant, and then we're picking up the leftovers. And that, like, I think that would have been good for kinesthetic learners.
Sure.
To just be like, oh, I'm picking up all this stuff. And I there's like, the reason why, you know, like this pops out to me is like, there are baskets left over. Full baskets. But specifically, what does he say? There are 12 baskets. So I think you get the 12 disciples who are just picking up a basket. I also think, at least as I read this, I think Jesus is doing something too that I think goes past just the earthly miracle of feeding all of these people. I think, and I don't want to say like this is the main purpose. I think what you have here is Jesus is demonstrating for the people that are there, but also to his disciples, that he provides for people. And I mean that in every facet. I don't just mean physically. I mean that he provides. And I think it's, at least for me, it's hard for me to remove the word bread with, you know, like what we're taught in the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. And then there are other passages in the Bible, like where Jesus is tempted. What is the word that is used for the Word of God? Man does not live on bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of God. There's this sustaining aspect. And Jesus, later in this chapter, guess what he's going to call himself? The bread of life. So I think John, as he records this and places this here, I think what he's doing is he is like showing the disciples learning a very specific lesson, and that is that Jesus is this one who sustains all of our needs. Yes?
Well, I think that the fact that there were 12 baskets of leftovers, that means that they went to all 5,000 plus people, and they all had plenty to eat. There weren't any that got ignored or left out.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we could study this here, the disciples were involved in this miracle way longer than we are. I mean, honestly, you stop and you think, how long does it take to serve someone food in your home? I don't know how many people you have, 5, whatever. You have 7, it takes a little longer. You're feeding 5,000 people, you're constantly doing something for hours. I worked in a cafeteria, we would have 2,000 people come through. We had 4 corners that like pumped through hundreds of people for lunch. Lunchtime started at 10 and ended at 1. 3 hours of non-stop service. And the thing is they're coming to you. Jesus has his disciples distributing this to people. Probably handing it out to the groups that are there. This would have taken a long time. And in this regard, I think the disciples would have readily remembered, which I think is one of the reasons why it's in all the Gospels. They would have readily remembered this event. You remember that time we were by the Sea of Galilee? I could just think of them, thinking about, Jesus after he's ascended into heaven. Remember that time by the Sea of Galilee? We fed so many people. Like, we just kept going, and Jesus kept producing. I mean, that would have stuck with them. That's not something you forget. And I think Jesus is teaching his disciples, like, I am so much more capable than you can possibly even imagine. You think about, like, expanding the mind of the disciples to see, like, the capability of Jesus. At the beginning of this miracle, what's the thought? Yeah, I don't know. Jesus, where are we going to find food for these people? I don't think they could even get enough bread from the towns around us. I just don't think it's possible. And at the end of the miracle, with their full basket full, not being able to eat anything because the word that's used there is they're stuffed. The thought would have been, who's going to provide this? I'm guessing, probably in the future, there would have been like something that jumps out in their mind, like, oh, you're Jesus. Maybe we look to Jesus on this one. Maybe? I don't know. And what is the result of this miracle of Jesus? What does it say? I kind of think this is interesting. Towards the end, what does it say? When the people saw the miraculous sign Jesus did, they said, which I think is an interesting phrase, this is the prophet who is coming into the world.
And that's when he left.
Yeah, we're gonna see him. They attach it to this one, but you're gonna see next that when Jesus realized that they were intending to force him to be king, and now he's leaving. But the end result from all of the people who were watching this is what the people said. This guy's special. So this is the moment where they've come to the sign, and then they're like glancing up at Jesus and go, "Hey, this guy is unlike anything else." And then they turn themselves back to the sign and go, "Boy, man, my stomach feels great. I kind of want that all the time, not have to worry about this. This would be kind of a sweet gig to be a disciple of Jesus, like free food? Are you kidding me? Oh, sign me up." Huh? No, so what's the lesson here? I mean, obviously the lesson is that Jesus provides for his people, but I think in this regard, I think even further than saying that is that it is increasing or encouraging the disciples to start to look to Jesus to provide for everything. So whenever you're confronted with something in life, instead of being like, well, how can I take care of this? The first response is let's turn to Jesus. And I think that is a fundamental and very important thing for believers. Because, like life is going to happen, and the first place you want to go to is Jesus. Yes, there are certain things that as we live in this world you just kind of have to take care of. Get it, understand that. But first, it's probably best to just send it to the Lord and then go about taking care of it. And I think Jesus is teaching his disciples this. This complete and total reliance upon him. And that is an important aspect of the faith. And it's obviously something that the disciples are kind of being stretched to understand too. Now, I want to continue. And so I'm going to. I'm going to read this last section. I think I only got 2 more questions, so we can finish up. I see people walking. It's okay. 15 through 21. So when Jesus realized that they intended to come and take him by force and make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. And when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into the boat, and started across the sea to Capernaum. It was already dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. A strong wind started to blow, and the sea became rough. And after they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea toward their boat, and they were afraid. That makes sense. But he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." And then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were heading. Okay. So what pushes Jesus away from the people? You said it already, Amy. So they're starting to recognize who Jesus is, but they've got all this, stuff in their head about, the Messiah's going to come and just be an earthly king. And Jesus is so much more than that. Mm-hmm. And so he can't be in that position because that's not why he came.
So he knew they weren't ready for the.
Yeah, he clearly sees that this is something that they're thinking in their head, and Jesus says, "This ain't why I'm here. I'm not here for glory. I'm here to glorify. I'm here to glorify God, and my being here is all about me redeeming you, not making your life on this earth easy. I ain't concerned about your life here. I mean, he is. But he's more concerned about the life that God wants for them in eternity with him. And so Jesus says, I'm not going to allow that to take place. And so he leaves. He retreats. And how does this fit in with what John has revealed so far? I mean, I think we've seen Jesus have this conversation with almost everybody in every chapter. His mom, where he says, "What's in between you and me, woman? My time hasn't come yet." She's like, "Hey, take care of this problem." He's like, "I came here to save people. Like, I'm here for eternity, not, 30 years. That's what's at stake for me." Right? And then you get the guy who's being healed in the chapter before this. Jesus says, "Hey, don't you want to be well?" Of course he does. What's Jesus talking about? He's talking about being right with God. That's what Jesus came for. So you see this tension constantly between the people and what Jesus came to do. Now, discuss with your table. We're not going to discuss with your tables. We're just going to discuss, and maybe I'll just tell you. I don't know. We'll see. Discuss with your tables the power of Jesus' words in this situation. This is a really interesting account, and I think it's quite profound what takes place. And so let's maybe just have a group discussion on this. What is the power of Jesus' words in this situation? Don't all speak.
Power over nature.
Go for it. I didn't hear what you said.
Power over nature and people.
Does Jesus command any power over nature here?
No.
He doesn't.
The laws of physics.
The laws of physics. How so?
He walks on water.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's true. I guess if that's what you're talking about, Marianne, then you would have to say yes. Okay.
Well, they were immediately on the shore after he got in.
So there's a couple of things that we notice when we're reading through this. There's a comment about strong wind and waves. It's rough out at sea. Jesus is walking on water. His words don't really, John's words tell us that this is what he's doing. But we don't really, all we see is Jesus walking towards his disciples on this rough sea. What do we see after that? We see disciples are afraid. Not only are they dealing with their situation of a rough sea, but now there's someone off in the distance that they're terrified to see. What calms the situation for the disciples? Jesus' words. Right? Jesus is the one that says, "It is I. I am here." Sound familiar? He says, "It is I." And then what does he say? Don't be afraid, or do not be afraid. And at Jesus' words, what takes place? Then the disciples are willing to take him into their boat, and then they reach their destination. That's curious. I can't help but look at this situation and say, boy, howdy, is this not a picture for life? You know, rough seas, windy seas, off in the distance is Jesus. You hear his voice, you hear his words. Okay, Jesus, get in my boat. We're there, where we need to be. And there's a sense of just like that roughness gone.
Was that word immediately? Is that like really? Is that meant to be like immediately he was there, like boom, boom? Okay.
That's what it sounds like to me.
I mean, or was it just like immediately? You know.
I don't know how else to translate immediately. I don't know how to translate immediately besides
Immediately.
there.
Okay.
Right there, immediately. I don't think it's like, oh, Jesus is in our boat. Now we had a conversation, and then we arrived at the shore immediately. I think it's Jesus gets in the boat, and they're now where they need to be. And I think that's significant. They'd been struggling. They'd been without Jesus, the winds and the waves, and we get all that. And then as soon as Jesus speaks, all that kind of falls by the wayside. He gets in the boat, and they're where they need to be. And I think as a believer, you're reading this, there's a message there, isn't there? When Jesus is in your boat, you're where you need to be. Right? Even though there might be wind, like, I really think immediately is like they're at the shore. But that's where they're headed. And when Jesus is in the boat, the disciples are just, they're removed from that situation, and you get this sense of like, as you read that, you get this sense of like, calm.
I think it's very comforting to know that immediately, no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, if immediately we know that Jesus is with us.
Yep.
It transcends time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think that's a miss. I think the way John writes, he does this on purpose. Remember, the theme for the book is these are written that you may believe. And so John writes in such a way as recognizing that what he is writing is the words which we hang on for our belief. And so John writes, and I think the other gospel writers knew that too, but John seems to have this way about writing that is so, well, it's different from the other gospels for sure because it's not synoptic, right? Any other questions about this? You take the last question with, you go ahead.
Just a quick question. Why do you think they left without Jesus on the boat?
I think there was probably a conversation between Jesus and his disciples of where they were going. And I think Jesus, as we see in other Gospels, where Jesus says, I need some time. Like, it's not uncommon to find Jesus by himself praying. And I think that's a good thing for us to see. So that's why I think they move along without Jesus. Because I think Jesus at some point is like, I need to go talk to Dad. I got to go talk to my Father. I'll catch up to you. I wonder how many times Jesus said that to his disciples. You know.
Does it say that anywhere?
What?
Like that he truly went to pray?
There are passages, not in this account, but there are passages where it talks about Jesus withdrew to pray.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think this is an example of that. And I think if I was the disciple and I hear Jesus say, I'll catch up to you, I'm like, okay. When and how?
I can't wait to find out.
Yeah. So, anything else? If not, let's pray. Gracious Father in heaven, we thank you for your words. We thank you for Jesus, who sets us free from sin and who gives us the ability to live for you. Move us to find great joy in him and your words. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.